We are now live. Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to my decision day. I'm Councillor Zoe Huggins. This is a decision day for adult social care and public health. I have with me my fellow Cabinet member, Councillor Reid, and the Chair and Vice Chair, Councillor Withers and Councillor Minahan. June, do we have any further apologies?
No, Chairman, I haven't received any further.
And we have not received any deputations.
No, we haven't received any. Thank you.
Thank you. So we are filming and broadcast this. So the decision day is being held remotely and will be recorded and broadcast live via the County Council's website. If the filming of the meeting is paused for any reason why the meeting is still taking place, then any audio recording will commence in order to assist with minute taking and resolve any lack of clarity. Audio recordings will not be broadcast. We have two agenda items. One is non-exempt, the second one is exempt with public and press. So the first part will be broadcast and then we will move into the exempt item. So the first item we have on decision day agenda is for the Department of Work and Pension, their Crisis and Resilience Fund. And Phil, I believe you're presenting the report.
Correct. Thank you, Councillor Huggins. So, yeah, good afternoon. I'm presenting the report relating to the DWP's Crisis and Resilience Fund, or CRF, and seeking approval for Hampshire's interim delivery model for the period April to June of this year. CRF replaces the former Household Support Fund from this April, and it provides a multi-year funding settlement. Hampshire has been allocated 10.4 million for the forthcoming financial year. It's important to say this isn't council tax funding, it's government money allocated to Hampshire through the CRF to be used responsibly and to deliver maximum value for residents. CRF has two primary objectives. First of these is to provide a cash-first safety net for low-income households who experience sudden financial shocks, and that would be through the delivery of crisis payments. And secondly, to invest in building local financial resilience, and that would be helping individuals and communities to better withstand financial pressures in the longer term and thus reduce crisis need. So why do we need an interim model? Well, DWP requires all authorities to deliver crisis payments from 1st of April. However, the complexity of implementing what is a completely new self-referral and assessment approach means that we cannot launch a full model by that date. So without an interim solution, that would leave a gap in provision and therefore that would leave residents without access to crisis support at a time when they may need it most. And obviously we would want to avoid anything detrimental to those vulnerable households. So the interim delivery proposal seeks approval for an interim approach, and that includes allocating up to 0.85 million to deliver an interim model between April and June, and that's comprised of up to £500,000 to citizens' advice, and that's for crisis payments and resilience support, access through self-referral. Grant funding of up to £250,000 to district and borough councils to issue crisis payments related to housing shortfalls, and then delegated authority for the Director of Adults Health and Care to spend up to £100,000 on crisis payments made following professional referrals through trusted partners. So the interim model ensures immediate continuity of support, meets all DWP expectations while we're developing a full CRF delivery model over the next couple of months. Next steps, therefore, the fully developed CRF model will be presented to the executive member for consideration in June. And in closing, I would just say today's recommendations ensure no interruption to vital crisis support. They do allow us to meet our statutory expectations, all the while we can develop a longer term resilient and preventative offer for Hampshire residents. Thank you, Councillor Huggins. So any questions and for you to take us through the recommendations?
Yeah, thank you. That was really comprehensive. And I think that there were a few vital things there you said, Phil, that obviously it is that safety net of those that have financial shock or crisis and the most vulnerable. And I think it's really important that obviously we ensure that there is that accessibility to those funds through a period of when we obviously develop the full development model, and take us through the period of purdah or election. So obviously when the new council comes in June, they will be able to review this. And it is also my understanding that the interim will be reviewed as part of the full delivery model. So any lessons learned during this interim period, you will take that on board. The other part for me is that it's very much that you suggested that the spend is up to. That's not to say that that spend will be fully spent. It really does depend on obviously the demand and that crisis that individuals were facing. However, reflective of the current cost of living and crisis that we see ourselves in today, I think we need to bear that in mind. But thank you. Stephen, you have a question.
Yes, thank you, Zoe. I think this is a very good proposal that's come forward, and in the current context with fuel prices rising and so on, will be even more important. The question I wanted to ask Phil was, in delegating to third parties to administer the grants, like the Citizens Advice Bureau and the districts and boroughs, we need to specify, I think, quite closely the criteria by which they'll make their decisions. Otherwise, we could end up with variable standards across Hampshire, a sort of postcode lottery, as it's colloquially called. What steps are we taking to make sure that doesn't happen?
So, yeah, very good question. So in terms of the districts and boroughs and the housing payments, that's in effect a continuation of what's been happening in previous years, and the transition to CRF from HSF sees that model continuing. So really that's a continuation of the same approach from the districts and boroughs, no real change from previous years. In terms of citizens advice, obviously there's lots of different citizens advice offices across Hampshire, but we will have one agreement with citizens advice, which provides a structured framework, which therefore ensures consistency and shared standards with each office that's delivering it. And obviously we have regular monitoring data and consistency checks via boards and steering groups as well. So we're as confident as we can be of a consistent approach across the county.
Very good, thank you.
Any other questions? Bill, Leslie?
No, I think they've all been covered, Zoe, very well. By yourself and by Stephen, and we know the system works, and as Stephen said, as long as it's handled and scrutinized correctly, it will get to the most needed at the appropriate time.
Just very quickly, Zoe, if I may, we touched upon, and Stephen touched upon, the fuel crisis. Is there any flex? I know you said up to that amount, but is there any flex in the case of actually the demand is much higher due to the current geopolitics and the current situation, or literally is that the top limit for the interim crisis? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Minahan. I'll come in there if I may. So we have the opportunity in May, June time, once we have the new county council members in place, for us to use the opportunity to come to exec member and look at a release of further funds. I think for this period, for the period we're talking about, which is 2 months, this is sufficient.
Okay.
What might also be included there is a new fund also through CRF for people experiencing financial shock due to oil heating issues. So that might mean that the money doesn't stretch quite as far, but we will be ready to take that into account and bring the executive member paper that we need to, in order to make sure that we've got that continuation of funds. So no, that's exactly why we're doing this, and we are confident that there's enough headroom in that amount for us to get through to the executive member decision in May, June time.
That's great. And yeah, we have a lot of rural communities, don't we? And a lot of them rely upon the oil for their heating, etc. And we've got vulnerable deprivation in rural communities. Thank you very much.
If there are no other comments or questions, without repeating myself, I'm happy to support this. So this would be recommendations on page 6. One recommendation, which is permission to allocate up to 0.85 million of the CRF funding on specific schemes as set out in the report for that interim period. I'm happy to support, so thank you. And thank you, Phil, for presenting that for us. So we're now moving on to agenda item 2. Just getting to my page, which is the exclusion of the press and public. If I can get to my page, I will read it out. The report is not for publication, so we are excluding the press and public. Exempt information within paragraph 3 of part 1 of the schedule 12A of the Local Government Act, being information relating to financial and business affairs of the local authority. Further, it is considered that in this circumstances, the public interest in maintaining the exempt outweighs the public interest in disclosing this information. While there may be public interest in disclosing this information, namely that it promotes accountability and scrutiny and transparency of the bodies and public spending, it is felt that on balance this outweighs the factors in favour of maintaining the exemption, namely the disclosure which would reveal details of sensitive and commercial and business information. We are therefore excluding the press and public for this exempt item. So June, I will look to you to let us know when that has been completed.